Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. As a continuation of January's weekly themes, this week we are focused on Running 102. Last week we focused on Running 101, where we discussed how do you even become a runner? What is it like? How do you even start? This week we're focused on topics that support your running. So topics like training plans, nutrition, cross-training, and more. So if you're interested in hearing more, be sure to subscribe and stay tuned. So we started off the week talking about training plans. A training plan is simply a schedule of what your running and overall fitness will look like over a period of time. You can find a training plan for any of the race distances like a 5K, 10K, half marathon, and full marathon. You can even find training plans for a dopey challenge, which incorporates all of these race distances. So training plans are a really great way to stay on track with your running and get ready for a race. But I also suggest that you follow a training plan when you're not getting ready for a race, when you need a little bit more structure in your running. So this is what I did late last year when I needed just a little bit more structure and accountability in my running and a little bit more motivation. So I followed a training plan for a 10K just to make sure that I was getting outside and getting my mileage in. So think about training plans definitely for preparing for a race, but also when you just need a little bit more motivation and structure. Also, be sure to remember that there are many different types of training plans out there and to follow the one that best fits your lifestyle. A successful training plan is one not only that will get you to the start of a race, but also through the finish line and even way before that. You want to make sure that you're staying consistent with your training schedule and that you are staying motivated and keep following the schedule. So if you have a schedule that does not really work for your lifestyle, then that's not going to be a successful plan for you. So be sure that you don't only just follow what's popular out there, but also what works for you and your goals. So two that I will suggest. One is from Jeff Galloway. Jeff Galloway has a free running plan that is through Run Disney, so I'll be sure to link that in the description below. And we talked about Jeff Galloway last week in the Run, Walk, Run method. He has some really great training plans that are free and available, so again, I'll be sure to link those below. And the second one that I will suggest is from Hal Higdon. Hal Higdon is probably the coach that I follow most often. He has training plans that work really well for my lifestyle and for my goals. He also had that dopey training plan that I used in 2019 to get ready for the 2020 dopey challenge. So those are just some two that I will suggest to you, but again, you should definitely follow the one that works best for your lifestyle and for your goals. So on day 2 of Running 102, we focused on cross-training. And cross-training is basically your non-running workouts, and it is super important. Cross-training is important because it helps prevent injury, and it helps do that by conditioning other muscle groups besides just the muscles that you use while you run. So this helps you build just an overall solid fitness foundation. So there are many different types of cross-training activities. Think yoga, Pilates, walking, rollerblading, tennis. So again, anything that you do that is not running. And what I also suggest is that you pick a cross-training activity where you balance the risk versus reward of that activity. So let me give you an example. Rollerblading. I love rollerblading, but it's almost guaranteed that I'm gonna fall at least once. So what you wanna do is make sure that you're not getting hurt in your cross-training activity that will prevent you from running. So as much as I love rollerblading, I'll just make sure that I'm staying safe and making sure that if I do fall, I'm falling in a way that won't prevent me from running the next day or even the next week. So just be sure to balance the risk versus reward with your cross-training activities, but also have a lot of fun. So on day 3 of Running 102, we discussed racing. How do you find races? How do you know which one is right for you? And how do you know if you're even ready to run the race? So after you've been running for a while, you may feel like it's time to start earning some medals. And medals are a huge motivation of mine, so I definitely get your interest in racing. So one thing that I will say about racing is that it's important to consider the race logistics versus what your race expectations are. So how do you envision your first race day? Do you envision yourself stepping up to the start line with a huge crowd around you with a big name sponsor, or do you see your race experience as more small and locally focused? So definitely consider the race logistics. Also think about where the race is. Are you considering a destination race? So something maybe even like a Run Disney race if you're not an Orlando local. Are you considering something that is local, right up the street, and you just want to jump in your car or maybe even run to the race start? So think about where the race is located as well. We also talked about how do you know if you're even ready to run a race? So I identified 5 ways that you can know if you are ready to race. I'll give you 3 of those ways here, and I'll also link the blog post in the description below. So one of the first things that you can identify if you're ready to race is if you've been consistent in your running. So have you been following a training plan? Have you been following that training plan well? So have you been running consistently, and have you built that good solid running base? The second way that you can know is if you have been following a good nutrition plan. Have you identified what works well for your body, what maybe doesn't work well for your body, and have you been hydrating and just keeping up with your overall nutrition? The third way that you can know is if you've been incorporating cross training. So as I just discussed, cross training is super important. It helps you build those other muscles, gives you that solid fitness foundation, is super important to your running. So have you been cross training? Have you been maybe rollerblading? I don't know, but have you been doing other things like yoga, Pilates, or whatever you consider your favorite cross training activity? For the other 2 ways that you can know if you're ready to race, be sure to click the link below in my description so you can read all 5 ways. So day 4 of Running 102, we discussed nutrition. And to be completely honest with you guys, nutrition is probably a topic that I discuss least on my channel, my website, and my Instagram. And that's for a couple of different reasons, but I definitely want you guys to talk to your doctor first before making any changes or adding anything to your diet. There are so many different articles and YouTube videos and just other resources that you guys can go to for nutrition help. But what I will say is that there are a few things that I have identified for my body just through trial and error. And I feel like training runs can be a really great way for you to try out some new nutrition, again, with your doctor's consideration, but use your training runs and really just your training time as a way to identify what works well for your body. Nutrition is so important for runners, and so I want to make sure that you guys have the right information and that you guys get it right, because once you do get your nutrition right, you know exactly what works well for your body. It helps your running in so many different ways. So what I have identified works well for my body is to, 1, stay hydrated, and I think that goes for all of us. Hydration is so important. So I make sure that I stay hydrated all throughout my training, all throughout my running, but especially in the week of my race. So hydration is key. The second thing that I do is before a long run, I like to eat a very light breakfast. So that could be maybe a little bit of oatmeal, toast with some peanut butter. Those are all things that I like to coat my stomach with before I go out on a longer run. And I consider a longer run maybe anything from 40 minutes to an hour or more. Also, speaking of 40 minutes, I have a 40-minute rule where every 40 minutes of exercise, I like to refuel with something. So I'll refuel with a gel or maybe an energy chew. I love the ones from Honey Stinger. Those are really great. Full disclosure, I am one of their ambassadors, but whether I'm an ambassador or not, I definitely love and recommend their product. So I'll be sure to link them below, but love some Honey Stinger chews, and I make sure that I eat one of those every 40 minutes that I'm exercising. Also stay hydrated, and then again, just make sure that you are following a nutrition routine that works well for you and that you consult your doctor before you make any changes. So for the last day of Running 102, we talked about the topic that I get asked about the most, which is Peloton for runners. And as I've mentioned here on my channel and so many other places, I love using my Peloton as one of my cross-training activities. It is a great low impact exercise, but also can be high intensity at times. I use it now that I own one, but I also used it in 2019 when I lived in a different building and we had a bunch of them in just our community gym. So that's where I actually first discovered Peloton. I was training for the Dopey Challenge, and after I took my first class, I quickly started incorporating that as my CrossFitness go-to. So after I took my first class, what I decided to do in order to incorporate it into my Dopey training is I started taking classes that were 45 minutes or longer. Most of the classes were 45 minutes, but I did take a couple of hour-long, and I think they had a 90-minute class as well. So I took these longer classes that were higher intensity, and my goal was to make sure that my heart rate was just as high or even a little bit higher than what it would normally be on a run, and to maintain that heart rate for as long as my normal run would be. So for example, if I had a 45-minute run scheduled one day and then I had a day of cross training, what I would do is try to replicate the exercise and just sort of the aerobic activity that I would have done in the day before. So what I would do is I would take a 45-minute Peloton class. I would look back to see around what my heart rate was for that run and just overall on average what my heart rate is for running. And I would make sure that I am working myself hard enough or as hard as I am in my running. So if my heart rate was, I don't know, let's say like 150 or so, then, let's be honest, a little bit higher than that. But I would try to make sure that my heart rate stays at that level and higher throughout the duration of the class. So once I started getting into really long runs during Dopey training, so 15 miles, 20 miles and beyond, what I would do is not take these super long Peloton classes, but I would take my normal 45-minute class, but also maybe add a HIIT training class. So something that wasn't super long, but got my heart rate up really high. So this really helped just build even more muscle, even more strength, again, to support that overall fitness base, which is super important. So that's how I used my Peloton for Dopey training. For my rest days and just really low impact days, I would take just the low impact 15-minute classes. I don't think I took any classes that were longer than 15 minutes, so I really just used them to flush out the lactic acid in my legs and just to, again, maybe just get a little bit of movement to support recovery. So that was my experience using Peloton for my running. Right now I'm doing something similar but not as intense, so I'm taking about 30-minute classes, sometimes 40-minute classes, but I do make sure that I am checking my heart rate and making sure that it gets at least to the level that it would get while I'm out on a run. So I hope you guys enjoyed this Running 102 weekly series. I got to hear from so many of you guys and talk about what your favorite cross-training activities are, what training plans you followed, and I love to hear from you. So be sure to comment below, what is your favorite cross-training activity? What do you like to do instead of run? I love to, again, rollerblade. I'm not very good at it, but I like rollerblading. I also love playing tennis. So what is your favorite cross-training activity? Next week, we have bounding as our weekly topic, so we're switching things up a little bit, but I'm really excited to highlight some of my favorite creators and show you guys some of the athletic bounds that I have done for Run Disney races and beyond. So be sure to subscribe, like this video, and stay tuned for the next. Bye guys.